Hey, I'm Russ.
And I'm Steve.
Growing up in the 80s, we were introduced to video games, movies, and technology that made a lasting impression on us and forever enriched our lives.
I think I'm gonna cry.
It's been a fascinating journey to be a part of, one that we constantly treasure.
Higher, booty.
Our goal is simple: share our magical moments of discovery and geek out with lovely folks, just like you.
Achievement unlocked.
So if you crave pixel goodness, memorable moments, and experiences that make your inner child do the happy dance, you've come to the right place.
Let's do this.
Welcome to Joygasm.
Yeah.
Any idea where I could find him?
You police plan on taking me in?
I would much prefer that to the alternative.
Every leap of civilization was built off the back of slaves. Replicants are the future, but I can only make so many.
I had the lock,
and he has the key.
I think I found him.
That's not possible. If this gets out, we've bought ourselves a war.
You're a cop. I had your job once.
Things were simpler then.
What do you want?
I want to ask you some questions. What happened?
I covered my tracks, scrambled the records. We were being hunted.
By who?
They know you're here.
You do not know what pain is yet. You will learn. Bring it to me.
This breaks the world.
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
Where is he?
The future of the species is finally unearthed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Joygasm, where we talk about video games, movies, and pop culture. My name is Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360, and joining me is my spastic sibling, Steve, Xbox Live Stevavitch, as we dive into episode 41 on this October 7th, 2017. To get the most out of Joygasm, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can also listen to our podcast on SoundCloud.com/Joygasm TV. For exclusive access and some sweet goodies, check us out at Patreon.com/Joygasm. And no matter which platform you use to enjoy the show, please drop us a subscription, thumbs up, or a review. It helps us build awareness, which we appreciate very much. Today's episode is dedicated to Blade Runner 2049. And please be aware that this is a spoiler alert filled episode. Yeah, exactly. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, and you don't want to, get any of the nitty gritty,
Go away.
yeah, exactly. Pause us, go see the movie, and come back. Otherwise, if you don't care, then keep on listening because I think we're probably going to have quite a bit to discuss. Steve, how you doing?
Russ, I think spastic was the good word for it. I like spastic. I feel like Twitch from South Park. How are you?
I'm good. This movie, I'm just gonna say out the bat, I was entertained.
A little redonkulous.
It was.
I think I went to bed at 5 this morning.
Really? You got
Yes.
like no sleep.
Yeah, I didn't. And I woke up at 10. I'm thinking, am I a replicant? No, what happened? I don't know.
I love you, Ryan Gosling.
I wish I had those abs.
Yeah.
Someone give me a tranquilizer.
Oh, good night. We are going to begin by giving our high-level impressions of the film and then drill down into the following categories. Cast/acting,
How you doing?
plot, script and dialogue, cinematography,
That looks great.
soundtrack, and costume/wardrobe. So just to kick things off here, high-level thoughts, which we've kind of already started to chat about here.
Yeah.
I liked the movie. I mean, I will go so far as I almost loved it. I liked it a lot. I think that's probably the best. I like it a lot. There were a couple of things in there that I felt like held it back just a bit from being absolute brilliant. But having said that, there was just a ton to like. What do you think, Steve?
Russ, this is the thing. And we'll get to that, the conclusions at the end. But I will tell you. Last night I had a different rating than I had this morning.
You had a different what?
Rating.
Oh, rating.
Uh-huh. And it was lower last night than it was this morning. And it's the kind of movie that you gotta munch on it a bit. You know, sometimes you go into a movie and you want to have fun. You want to unplant your brain from your skull, leave it at the door, eat a little bucket of popcorn and some soda, and just have fun. Check out for a minute. No can do here. You got to have your brain plugged in. You know what I mean? And I think you probably need to be eating popcorn, but you're probably going to be thinking so much that you'll forget to eat the popcorn. At the end, you're like, oh, man, it's been 3 hours. Now it's bad popcorn.
You're like
It's all
munching
cold.
on the popcorn bag. This butter's good.
No, but you just played the trailer, so that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about the trailers a lot this year, and sometimes they fit and sometimes they don't fit. And, I went into the movie not knowing what to expect. I mean, somewhat to expect, but at the same time, with movies that have come out, I don't want to get my hopes up too high because I don't want to be disappointed. And I don't want to get them too low because then I'm not really excited or thrilled to be there in the first place. But the movie was both. It was a little bit of what I expected and then a lot of surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially considering the fact that we watched the original Blade Runner, I think it was Wednesday night. And that was a big deal just because we haven't seen it. I know for me, I saw it about 2 years ago. I busted out my good old DVD version of it. I didn't have the final cut. There are like 3 versions of the film. I think I have the director's cut.
Yeah.
And I know that there has been a lot of questions on the various forums just about, well, is it going to continue down the path that the final cut had, or is it going to deviate from it? And I think one of the main questions, of course, is Deckard, who's played by Harrison Ford, is he in fact a replicant?
We'll get to that in a bit, Russ.
And we will. So,
However, sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I did do a little bit of digging, and the director. Oh, I hear a chime. Yeah, that must have been. Was that my brain thinking of an idea? Man, that really does happen.
That worked out well, didn't it?
But the director did say that he liked the final cut, Blade Runner, the final cut, and that's what he based this. No, he didn't base the whole movie onto this one, but
Right.
that was his inspiration. What you looking for, Russ? You look like at some point your eyes were darting this, that, and the other, and then you wanted to give me a big bear hug.
Keep talking. I'm going to hunt down a tissue.
Well, let's see. Oh, they're right over there because I already picked one up earlier.
Oh, thank you.
So, like I said, I think you need to mull on it a bit, but if I were to throw a few words in there, I would say it's deep, it's psychological, it's complex, kind of like the snot you're blowing into that tissue. You can't watch it, leave the theater, and think, well, that was nice, and that's it. Like, this, it's a believable story, and it takes time to resonate with you, and you need to talk about it. Like, you can't, like, I don't think you can just leave the ideas in your head. Like, you have to interact with people to talk about it.
Right.
And that might have been part of the purpose, you know?
Well, it's a deep movie. Even the first film, when the first film came out back in 1982, there really wasn't any other film out there that had such a forward-thinking vision like Blade Runner did. And also, too, just in terms of the source material as well, it was just, like you said, there was a lot to gnaw on. And it's kind of funny. We'll get more into that later in terms of the script and stuff. But a lot of subsequent films that came out after the original Blade Runner really borrowed heavily from a lot of the techniques that they employed within the original Blade Runner. So there is a lot, I think, that was riding on the shoulders of the sequel in terms of, okay, are they going to be able to really push that farther? And I think in some cases they did. Others, I think it was kind of more just standard Blade Runner fare, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
The other high level thoughts I was thinking about too is the fact that I was really unsure about Ryan Gosling fronting like this or headlining this film. And I really thought that he carried the movie effortlessly. I really found myself enjoying his performance and just bought into it. What'd you think?
That was probably one of my last high level thoughts. Well, I'll go ahead and say it now since you bring it up. No, I mean, this movie definitely deserves some awards, not only for Gosling, because he did a great job, but also the direction and the cinematography, which we'll also get into later. But I mean, you know, in the theater, I was still trying to figure out what a replicant it is. Is it an android? Is it a clone? Is it, because there's a lot of different, okay, if it's this, then why is it that? If it's that, then why is it this? And, set far into the future, sort of. Kinda, in our lifetime anyway.
Still no flying cars.
I want a flying car.
Yeah.
The machine. I was thinking initially. Let's just say they're a machine, because that was my initial thought.
That was mine too. Like for some reason, I thought that it was like a synthetic being.
Yeah, and so my mind goes to like Transformers, where it's or
the Terminator,
or the
something.
Terminator, yeah, or there's like these fixed motions and whirs and clanks and buzzes and stuff.
Yeah,
but these hypothetical machines were so sophisticated that they still had that perfect movement that a machine would have, and not the imperfect movements of like a human. If we like stumble a little bit as we're walking or something. And I don't know, maybe it was just me who noticed that, but a lot of the actors, not just Gosling, but the other actors who are replicants too, had that. Like, they had certain ways that they were walking that I would think only a machine would walk like that.
Yeah, I think that they were probably coached a bit from the director as to how they wanted them to behave and whatnot. And I had the same question as you, because I was leaving the theater trying to figure out, okay, what exactly are they? And I ended up looking, because if you recall, I recorded like the very first part of the film with all the writing that came out.
Oh, thank goodness, because that writing was kind of small.
Yeah, it was a little small, but I read on there they are bioengineered humans. So they are people. It's just, think of it as like kind of a second cousin to cloning, basically.
But then again, Ryan, I was about to really reveal something. I'll hold that.
What?
I was about to give a spoiler away. I'll wait for that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I totally agree. I think the film is a visual tour de force, just a feast for the eyes.
Yeah.
Every shot, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is worth the price of admission right here. My eyes are very happy right now.
And it kept the feeling from the first movie as well. Like,
yeah.
And maybe because you and I saw the first movie the night before, which was highly rewarding. Like, I would recommend, if anyone was to see the movie who has not seen it yet, you will be rewarded more if you go watch the original again before you go see this movie.
Right.
But the same exact feeling, and I mean the same exact feeling I had watching the first, translated into the second as well.
Yeah. It's crazy to see a return to the world of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we just saw the first film the night before, still just being able to come back into it, and especially with today's special effects and just how they're able to visualize everything into something tangible, it's crazy.
There's lots to take in too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to think about, like we've been speaking about, but I feel like I can't just go right back in the theater and see it again. Like I could go see Guardians of the Galaxy again.
Yeah.
Like I can leave the theater and go like, man, that was such a good time. I'm gonna go back in there and watch it again. This one, I'm like, I need to process a bit. I need to go outside and get some sunshine. And
Those were funny when we left the theater and we were blasted by the sunlight. We're like,
man,
it was a dark film.
I don't think that it needed to be as long as it did to tell its story.
Yeah, it was almost 3 hours. It was
That's
like 2 hours and 44 minutes or something.
Yeah, I mean, they do give you your money's worth, for sure.
Yeah.
But I thought the pacing was just a tad off. Like I thought some of the scenes were a little bit too long. Mm-hmm. And they could have shortened them up. And I didn't think the movie needed to be that long to actually say what they wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the high level thoughts I have is that Blade Runner is a world that is it's begging to be fleshed out.
Right.
With new stories, new characters. I think it's cool that we are continuing down this path of finding out what happened to Deckard, introducing a new character like Ryan Gosling's Officer K, as well as some of the other characters. That's cool, but it's still a continuation of the original story. And I would love to see these standalone stories get made where maybe it's not necessarily an officer, it's someone else entirely or whatever, just because it's such a world that I want to visit over and over again. It's almost like John Wick in a way, not in terms of like how similar the two movies are together, but just like John Wick is another world that's just begging to be fleshed out. It has such potential to like tell these different assassin stories and how they interweave with each other, and just having this kind of more symbiotic, organic type of just world that they live in. I think with Blade Runner that there's a ton, especially considering the fact that they also have other planets that they're colonizing and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the sky is the limit in terms of what they could talk about.
I also thought that even though this was very, 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 very good film, I thought that this was too late in a way. I wanted to see, I wanted to see this sequel a while ago. I didn't want to wait, from 1982, even though I was born in 1981, but I didn't want to wait like this long to have this sequel. I would rather see this story with like a younger Harrison Ford, like in between both.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm stoked that we got to see it and it came out. Thank goodness. But at the same time, I think, okay, well, Harrison Ford's only got so much acting left in him. I mean, what is it? He's 70?
He's in his 70s.
So, someone else is going to have to take the reins here pretty soon. If this gets really, really popular.
Yeah. Well, let's transition into cast/acting here. Of course, we already talked about Ryan Gosling. I thought he was terrific. I thought he was just a fantastic addition to the Blade Runner family. Of course, we were both very pleased as punch to see that Robin Wright was in the film.
Indeed.
I thought she also totally belonged in the Blade Runner world. I have I have this theory where I think if you were to take not certain, but just a lot of different 80s stars when they were younger, you could probably fit them rather well into Blade Runner. And I haven't really figured out a way to say this clearly, but there's a look that we grew up with as kids in the 80s where we saw these actors who were in their 20s and 30s. They just had that kind of 80s actor look. And it's hard for me to place my finger on it, but this is a great example of Robin Wright, who, we grew up knowing her as being in The Princess Bride. And so seeing her make this awesome comeback, not only in Wonder Woman, but and House of Cards, and also now Blade Runner, it's just super cool to see these people who have aged, but yet still harness there's some sort of 80s magic there. And I feel like when it comes to something like Blade Runner, it's just great. I mean, even seeing that one guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but he was he played kind of just a small role in the original Blade Runner, but he had the cane.
Oh, I think his name was Gaff. G-A-F-F.
Something like that, yeah. And having him make another cameo in this film, still, it was just like, yeah, he has that like, just that look. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think?
No, I'm glad they brought back some of the cast, and like I said, I like Gosling. I think he did very, very well. I think he should be nominated. I like Dave Bautista. I think that's his name.
Yeah. I mean, he's in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I know, that's the thing, and he doesn't have a very long acting history. Like
No.
his list of movies is short, but
Wasn't he a part of like the WWE?
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's like that's not even silver screen. That's completely different. But he did for the small little time that he was in it.
It was captivating, wasn't it?
He was convincing. Yeah, he did. I mean, I thought at first, if he laughs once, like it's going to be done.
Yeah.
And he did, and he kept it. And I thought, wow, that kudos for him.
Yeah.
He put it on.
Sylvia Hoeks, who plays Jared Leto's femme fatale.
Love.
She was badass.
Yeah. Again, she had that that clone android kind of look to her, and she could bring on the emotion in a second, but not kind of convey too much emotion. Like if someone starts to cry, you're like, oh, don't cry, don't cry. Oh no, you see their eyes welling up. She kept that facial structure all there, and then I don't know. That was superbly done.
Yeah, I thought it was refreshing to see a female have a ruthless, dreadful presence, because you don't really see that too often. Like you'll see women who plot.
Yeah.
Or conniving women or something like that. But she really, when she was on screen, I had this like, oh no moment.
Yeah.
It was just like, something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. If we go back to Robin Wright for a second, I was thankful to see her in another movie, and I'm glad we're seeing her more.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I thought her character could have been written more strong.
I wanted to see more of her.
I wanted to see more of her, but I wanted her to see her do more than just sit behind
a desk
and be like a lieutenant and giving orders. And come on, Robin Wright's way more capable than that. Let her do something else. I mean, we saw her in Wonder Woman. I mean, she could do a bunch. And then when Love came in, L-U-V, Love.
That was probably the best scene with Robin Wright in
it. Was, but I thought you're just going to what she's going to come here to kill you. I mean, you're just going to stand there? Really? I just thought that could have been, they could have written that a little bit better. But as far as acting is concerned, she did a top-notch job.
What do you think of Harrison Ford?
This is one of the best I've seen Harrison Ford, and I'll tell you that straight-faced.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, watching him in the first Blade Runner, we were like, oh man, that's quintessential Harrison Ford right there. And then I saw him in Rogue One, and I thought...
Rogue One?
Or was it Rogue One?
You
or was
mean
it
Force Awakens?
I can't remember. I'm trying to remember all these titles in my mind. I'm sorry.
Blasphemy over there.
Blasphemy. I could pass on him in that movie. I was like, come on, Harrison. I loved him in Indiana Jones, and I loved him in the first Blade Runner. And in this one, I don't know. He brought his character to the next level, I felt. And especially with his age, it just seemed like he brought more of that character to life and brought that character into belief. And even though it was like the last quarter of the film, I was like, wow, Harrison Ford, baby, welcome back.
See, it's interesting. I actually have more of the opposite reaction for Harrison Ford.
Oh, well, we'll just pass right over that. Okay, anyway.
I thought he was one of the more weaker performances. I was actually happy that he was not in the film more than he was.
Oh, okay.
I think that it was necessary to have him in the film. And I think it was kind of the same with Star Wars Force Awakens in the sense that he is one of the anchors of this world. And so if you're going to make a Blade Runner movie, you have to have him in there. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was terrific. However, it's just, I think there were kind of a variety of reasons why I felt that way. I thought that his line delivery was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. I did think it was kind of silly to watch him punch this younger guy, and he's like 70 something years old. And it was like, dude, you're not going to be hurting anybody. You're too frail.
Yeah, but that's his character though.
It's his character. But I thought that, and again, I think this is a testament to Ryan Gosling. I fully bought into him as this officer who hunts down replicants and that sort of thing. It was great. And I thought Harrison Ford was fantastic in the original Blade Runner, but in this one, it just seemed like there was just, it wasn't bad, but it was just one of more of the weaker performances. And to be honest, I mean, I was kind of anticipating that to a certain extent, just because, I mean, the guy he's just old, and so he can't do a lot of the action sequences and some of the other things. And so it's just, I thought it was appropriate considering the fact that he was in the last third of the film. And I just thought, had he been in the film more than that, I think probably would have honestly dragged the film down a little bit. I'm glad, like I said, I'm just glad how they decided to use him. Moving on to the next.
We are forgetting somebody.
Oh.
Ana de Armas.
I'm looking at my
you were
notes.
Gonna go to the next section.
No.
Wait a minute.
I was going to say, moving on to the next talent on my list here. That's awesome that we both. Oh, dude, Jinx.
No, okay, you go first. No, you go first.
Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, no. Okay, so when she first got on the screen, I thought, yeah, but she's gonna be a passable character. They're just kind of showing her for the background. She was a quintessential part.
She was
of the movie. Like that, there was themes in the movie that had solely to do with her, and she played. That movie could not have been as good if she was not in it.
I totally agree.
And I was starting to think, in the future, this is going to happen in the future at some point. I mean, we already have little robot people to satisfy this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. Companionship is going to be something that's never going to go away. People are always going to be lonely. They're always going to want folks to be with and keep them company. And if I'm manufacturing those things and there's a lonely dude out there, and I've been lonely before, you've been lonely before, and we want a female to keep us company, how would we make that female look and sound and act? I mean, how would you program all that stuff?
Seriously.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought that who they got to play, apparently she's from Cuba. I don't really know too much about her acting career, but the only other film that comes to mind that I think she's in is called Knock Knock, and it's with like Keanu Reeves and someone else. I can't remember who it is, but I think it was kind of a thriller of a movie of some. I never saw it, but her face looked familiar because she had kind of a striking look in the trailer at that point. But so seeing her here, yeah, I totally agree. I think that was absolutely one of the best roles in the entire film. Like if they didn't have her in there, I think that would have been a loss.
If I was to rewind for a little bit, back to Harrison Ford,
when
you mentioned him punching Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
He actually did hit him once.
Yeah, actually, I have that written down as part of the trivia that we're going to get to toward the end there. But yeah, that was funny.
Man,
we'll get to that later.
Good. Then you probably have the Gosling little thing that I looked up as well.
Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. Tag team. So when it comes to, let's see, Mackenzie Davis, who played the prostitute / freedom fighter, she was the one who came over to Gosling's area. In terms of her acting was decent for what it was. I mean, she didn't have a huge part.
Yeah.
She played just this smaller part, but she had the quintessential 80s look.
Yeah, she did.
I mean, looking at her, I was just like, wow, that is Blade Runner 1982.
Yeah.
Like it was just so cool.
That's more of a costume design, Russ, I think, okay?
It was, it's more of like her facial structure and how she acted. I felt like she fit right into that world just so well. So I thought that was worthy of mention.
Yeah, I beyond that, I recognize that, but beyond it, I kind of thought she was a little bit forgettable.
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't like a major role. What'd you think of Jared Leto?
Weird. I mean, he wasn't weird as in like Joker weird.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have this similar feeling that I did with Robin Wright's character, where I wish they were writing the actual character different.
Okay.
Because I think Jared Leto could have been better, but he was written to be off. Because I didn't. How should I put this? When I see a villain, I want to like the villain. Like I like the Joker.
You want to love to hate him.
I want to love to hate him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't convincing as a villain. Like, okay, I saw him and he was a bad guy. I'm like, okay, he's going to be bad. But when you saw, for example, the the CEO of the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner 1, he wasn't an evil guy. He was a very intelligent, sophisticated. I mean, he was going through algorithms with Roy,
Right.
you know, how he could expand Roy's lifespan. I mean, the guy was smart.
Right.
This guy, he didn't show smarts. He just showed like maybe he inherited the corporation and he had a bad side to him, and therefore.
Well, he was an eccentric character. He was someone who was a brilliant person too. He was the one who, and once again, this goes back to the initial exposition that they had, you know, all the text on the screen at the beginning that talked about how he was the one who really saved civilization through, I think it was like synthesized farming or something like that. But essentially that was one of the problems with that, was that they had some sort of like ecosystem disaster. And so he single-handedly was able to save the human race through this new type of synthesized food, and then move on from there. So I think some of his ideology was a bit questionable at the very least. You know, he had kind of this grandiose idea of wanting to just essentially replace humanity with this bioengineered version of humanity. And so I think you have more of kind of these complex characters that, you know, it's not like you have black and white in terms of you're bad, you're good. It's kind of more of this grayer area. Of course, it's more, you know, darker shades of gray, because it's kind of like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not sure if you should be the one to be in charge of making that decision.
Yeah.
So, but I thought he had kind of an unpredictable mystique about him. I do wish he was more in the film, just because if you think about it, he really didn't have that many scenes. And the scenes he was in, it was like, okay, here's this person. He too is a bit eccentric. And I realized that he was actually blind. Mm-hmm. He was a blind character. I wasn't sure when we were watching the film if he was in fact blind or if he just had like this enhanced vision or something. But I realized that all those like futuristic little floaty probes that were kind of following him around, that was his eyesight.
Right. Or his senses. Yeah.
Yeah. He was able to like kind of quote unquote see people and that sort of thing by those things floating around and getting, you know, readings on people, that sort of thing. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I just, you know, there was 3 short films that the director put out before.
Did you see those? I never watched them.
Part of why I stayed up late last night.
You watched all 3?
I watched all 3.
How are they?
They're good. They're just short. But they don't.
It's a short film.
It's a short film. I mean, short is in like 6 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they are good, but they don't explain a whole lot. And so with the text in the beginning of the film added to the short film part that he's in, to me, it just wasn't enough to really believe in him as a decent character or a believable villain or a villain that I would like to see again. Like if he came back on screen and be like, okay, show me some history, show me some more development, show me something else, you know, because right now I'm willing to move on.
Well, and that's why I wanted to see more of him in the film, just because I felt like there wasn't enough opportunity to be able to get to know who he was, we got an idea of kind of what he stood for in terms of just this one idea, but we didn't really know about his background or just some of the other decisions that he would make that were moral in nature, that sort of thing. We just didn't have enough. It was like, here's a guy, he's this successful industrialist, he has all this money, he knows how to do certain things, so he's clearly a brilliant mind, but what else is there? And it's surprising considering the fact that the film was almost 3 hours long. You would think that there would be more opportunity for that. Well, shall we dive into plot, Steve?
Sure, Rush.
Okay. So my first thought regarding the plot is that it was rather simple. I think that it was relying a lot on the futuristic visuals and nebulous dialogue to give the impression that there is more afoot than there really was. So like, because if you think about it, the plot itself at its core was that there was this baby that was born that they're trying to find, that apparently was conceived by a human and a bioengineered human, aka replicant. That's kind of the whole point of this movie is trying to find out where this baby is and where Deckard is, that sort of thing. And so like, if you drill down into that, then it's like, okay, well then how do you make this more complex? And so a lot of it was just, you're once again, you're dazzled by the visuals. So your brain is constantly processing just what's going on screen. And then, like I said, the dialogue itself, which we'll get to later on, was also it was performed in a way that, first of all, had a lot of sophistication to it, but also was done. It wasn't spoon feeding the audience. Like, here's what I'm saying. Here are my thoughts, my feelings. Here's the conflict, that sort of thing. It was much more insinuated, I guess. Like they kind of left like sentences half finished, or they completed sentences that were kind of open ended in terms of just how you as a viewer would interpret it, that sort of thing. But I think that overall it continues the oppressive dystopian theme of overpopulation, the collapse of the ecosystems, and just an overall breakdown of social etiquette. Did you feel that way? If you think of the original Blade Runner versus this one.
I did, but overwhelmingly, I thought the question remained: what does it mean to be human, to exist? What does it mean to be alive? Mm-hmm. And what defines or constitutes a life? Because in a lot of the movie, you can't really tell who is a replicant and who is a human. And you see Joe, or K, Officer K, he's living alone. He has very minimal human interaction.
Right.
Normal human interaction. And he is A-OK having a relationship with a hologram.
Yeah.
And the hologram is made to serve him.
And not to mention the fact that hologram was actually manufactured by Jared Leto.
Right. But I don't know. We give all these feelings and expressions to life, and what they're spoon feeding us is either the marketing or it's what people think that we want, and they're just going to give it to us. They're going to tell us what we want to hear to make us feel better and accepted. Oh, by the way, if this ever happens in real life, please, for the love for the love of Pete, if there's a romantic moment that you're about to have with your hologram, please forward the call to voicemail. Don't have the thing pick up the call right before you're going to have a romantic kiss with the lights. Okay? I mean, I was like, oh, come on. We harnessed every carnal need and desire that us humans want. And then a call comes through. I thought, okay, Hollywood, really? Again?
Well,
I
think it served to just reinforce the fact that she wasn't real. And I think that it was great I thought it was cool that it was actually in there, just because I, for one, started to kind of get into the fact that, man, she's real. And then all of a sudden this call comes in and you realize that she's just an application. It's fun to put those things in, because on the one hand, I was like, oh man, I want to see them complete this romantic moment. But at the same time, it's pathetic because it's not a real person.
I know.
It's not even a replicant.
Yeah.
It's so
lights.
Yeah. It's literally like just this fancy 3D application.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the relationship Kay has with Joy, it's
Joy.
spelled J-O-I. So
Joy.
I'm assuming it's Joy.
Right.
The relationship that they had just fascinated me. The idea of finding a meaningful relationship with a holographic artificial intelligence is something that I think honestly is just around the corner of society today. I think that we're getting to that point as we have our AIs be more mature and sophisticated. I mean, right now it's still very archaic. Like if you look at Siri or whatever, it's or Alexa, that sort of thing. But I would say 20 years from now, I would not be surprised to see AI that has a lot of those social sophistication attributes applied to it, to where you could have a full-on conversation and they or it would be able to respond to you in kind, to the point where you're looking forward to coming home and having a conversation with this entity that has a wealth of knowledge that learns your behaviors better than you know yourself. I mean, just having that level of human interaction.
Who listens?
What?
Who listens to you?
Oh, I think it said hula lessons.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that'll be programmed
Let
in
me
there
tell
too.
you, I want an AI that could teach me hula lessons.
And I want that AI to belly dance like Shakira.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, listening is a driving factor that, just all people want to have when it comes to someone who would be classified as like, quote unquote, a mate.
Plus, it stems more from this movie. I mean, there's the movie Her does the same thing.
I love that movie.
And the movie Ex Machina does the same thing. So it's on a lot of people's minds. Yeah,
there has been recently a really neat exploration from directors with that whole theme. But yeah, I mean, it demonstrates how a more socially sophisticated AI could facilitate being an ideal mate, causing me to think about how detrimental it would be to the human race overall surviving long term, since reproducing would most likely plummet because you have this AI and you're just spending all this time with it and you're developing this virtual relationship.
Well, it's also Deckard's dog too. I mean, if we go past Joy and you go to Deckard's dog, in the end when Kay says, "Your dog, is it real?" and Harrison goes, "Why don't you ask him?" Sort of thing. Like, we got bigger fish to fry. There's a lot more things happening that we need to be aware of. Or
well, again,
about.
It's like you said, there's companionship on multiple levels on that.
Yeah.
But in terms of Kay, he was fantasizing about coming home, having like the quintessential housewife that has dinner ready, which is so funny when she puts that holographic plate down. I don't know what the heck he was going to eat, but that was nasty.
I know. I was like, they're just trying to cover it up. Well, it could have been something. Remember in the beginning, Sap or Sapo, I forgot what John Bautista's character, he was farming these proteins. These proteins just look like maggots, like fat maggots.
Yeah, insects actually are a great source of protein.
They are.
They were gross though.
Just ask Bear Grylls. No. Anyway, so he could have been eating that, but I was thinking that too. Like, what was that? I have to go back and like rewatch him. What does he have in his bowl?
Right.
And she goes, "Here's your food." Yeah, I'm gonna look at like some stir fry, whatever, while I'm eating maggots. Great.
Going back to the whole like companionship thing. As a side note, seeing the futuristic brothel that
I was just gonna say that.
Oh, you were your Jinx. Oh, we're having another second Jinx. It was crazy how it really wasn't very private at all.
Yeah, no, it was downtown. This is at the downtown brothel.
It was. I mean, it was like there was no privacy really, and it exacerbates the notion that in this vision of the future, relationships and morals have really taken a back seat, causing people to take the least risky route of fulfilling their desires, and it's just shameless. I mean, I think that was one of the overarching visuals that was repeated throughout the film. Is there's a lot of sexuality in there, but no one's happy. It's at this very basic level of selfishness of I need to have this satisfied. How can I do it in a way that doesn't put me out there too much? Like it's the least risky road to be able to get that accomplished. And so whether it's a holographic AI or, I mean, like once again, having like replicant prostitutes. I mean, it was weird seeing how they just had these essentially like these frosted glass cubes where people were literally like having sex next to each other and you could hear them and everything. You're just like, my goodness, like there's something wrong here.
Open, yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of spooky too. At least I thought it was. Is back to Jared Leto. Mm-hmm. You never see him with a regular human. You just see him with assistants that are replicants. Basically.
Did they ever talk about how he lost his vision in the movie?
They did not. Not even in the short film.
Okay. Yeah, that was something that I was also wanting to know about, is how did he lose his vision? Just little things like that. Or maybe they don't have to like explain everything, but just allude to something. I felt a real sense of loss when Joy was destroyed. Remember when I think, what's her name? Love?
Yep.
When she smashed that little portable device that Kay had. honestly, I mean, I felt bad just because that was what Kay, based his kind of his love interest into, but also too, she was really the only positive element in the entire film. I mean, that's one of the crazy notions about it. Everything else is so dark and depressing and
Hollowed, empty.
Yeah, there's just no life. There's no carefree positivity, I guess you could say. And even though you have this AI who was designed and engineered from the ground up to be that way,
to make you happy.
Yeah, still, I think what was cool, and this again, I don't want to digress too much, but I think I was willing to buy into the idea that with this AI, the AI was sophisticated enough that it was self-aware, that it was designed to be able to evolve and grow with whoever the person was that bought them. And as they accumulated more knowledge, and even the upgrades, if you notice something in the film, I thought it was really cool how he was able to use his bonus money to buy an upgrade for Joy. And then as a result, she's able to become even more real in his life.
Yeah. He can take her with him.
Yeah. I mean, just seeing that, I felt a sense of loss at that moment because I was like, oh man, now there's no joy.
There's no joy. To me, it was bittersweet, but to go just to touch off what you just said, I didn't know what that was in the beginning. He goes, "Oh, I brought you something." I'm like, "No, he bought it. He bought her in some sort of digital necklace or jewelry or whatever." And he's like, "No, now you can I can take you with me. Where you want to go outside?" That was a really cool scene. But I thought, dude, what's in that little package? Because it wasn't a little jewelry looking package to me. That's what it looked like.
It looked like a little necklace box or something. The original Blade Runner.
Wait, I'm sorry.
He posted his index finger into the air. I'm stopping.
I halted you. I was going to go on to say that the whole joy, passing, crushing, whatever.
Joygasm?
No.
Shameless plug.
It was bittersweet. I felt more sorry, not that she was gone, but I felt sorry for for Kay. Because as he's, he just got beat up and he's bloody and he's walking outside to the constant bombarding LA rain. And
I was going to say, man, LA is getting a lot of rain this year.
Why did that guy have such a hard time farming and growing plants? And then, just friggin' irrigate it from LA.
Yeah.
Good grief. So anyhow, Joy points at him and then she's like starting to tell him stuff that, you are special. You're the one. And he thinks to himself, man, was she just programmed to tell me as a response to all that stuff, And at the end, when she tells him, I love you with all that expression, I thought, is this thing an AI or is this, how much learning is this thing it programmed with? But I thought, okay, in a time of need, maybe the writer of the software went, okay, if there's going to become a life-threatening moment, we're going to program I love you because that's what people are going to want to hear. And I think he thought that because he didn't have any emotion on his face. He didn't have emotion most of the movie, actually. But you would think he would after all this discovery when he saw that big, that was huge. Talk about advertising. Got ballerinas dancing in the streets. Man. I was like, whoa. It's enormous.
Yeah.
And it's naked.
That's the biggest pair of boobies I've ever seen.
Man.
It's kind of scary. Yeah, I totally agree. I thought it was a poignant moment when Kay realizes that his love interest was just this mass-produced AI product that wasn't exclusive or special to him. You could tell. It was just... But, at the same time, having said that, I really do. Once again, I've personally bought into the notion that this was an AI that was kind of similar to Her, the movie Her, in the sense that it was an AI that if you bought it and you had this ongoing relationship, it would learn you on a psychological level and a social level. It would be constantly analyzing you. And the folks, the creators who built the AI in the first place would probably have a lot of that built in to the point where as it evolved, it became more self-aware. So I think I'm going to choose to believe that when there was that moment where I think the AI was mature enough in its programming to understand it. It was self-aware. It knew it was going to cease to exist. And I think when you get to the point of being self-aware, then regardless of whether you are a synthetic entity or you are human or animal, whatever it is, you want to survive. And if you realize you're not going to, there is that moment of just trying to communicate something.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I think I took it. I think that it would be too. I think it wouldn't have. I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, I don't think it would have worked as well. But I that's not to dismiss what I just said, which was I do think that there was that moment of realization where it wasn't like she was the only one, that she was and I think that's where humanity comes back into play, is the fact that there's only one person, there's only one you. With her, it's like he could have gone back and bought another item. He'd have to start from scratch
That would
again.
suck.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it was definitely interesting.
You know what was a poignant moment before we move on from Joy is when she calls the call girl to come over to the house so that she could have a more meaningful.
Did she call her?
Physical? Yeah. Yep. She
The AI?
Yep. Because she says, "I knew you liked her." Remember when he was at the brothel? He was just like having a drink out there in the open.
Yeah.
And that's
Little
when,
chime turned on.
Yeah, actually, was that Peter and the Dragon? Pete and the Dragon?
Yeah.
I think so. Anyhow, it was just so cool.
Actually,
It was
wait.
I think it was.
No, it wasn't Peter and the Dragon. Peter and the Wolf.
Peter the Wolf. Oh man,
I think you got Pete's Dragon and Peter and the
all this
Wolf.
Peters. Peter. Oh, Peter. Anyhow, it was Peter Griffin. So, so she calls her somehow and invites her over, and she's trying to synchronize her movements with the prostitute.
Right.
And she could have said, "Now please be still so I can synchronize with your movement."
Yeah.
But she said, "That's please be still. I'm gonna need to synchronize." Sort of like I'm putting myself out there to please the person I'm in a relationship with. You know, whoa, all right. I'll have to obey an AI now.
And her had a scene like that too.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's just, it's so crazy to think about the notion that if you could design an AI that once again was constantly evolving itself, was organic, was self-aware, that could actually make choices itself. You know, it's just interesting that when you compare that to humanity, where humanity is also a system of choices that are predicated upon preconditioning. Like there are certain things that will attract you, but that have more of a physical appearance. But really, I mean, a lot of our decisions that are made based on a romantic relationship have to do with things like how we were raised around our parents. You know, a lot of our parents' personalities play a pivotal role in that sort of decision making. And there's just a ton we could talk about, but we don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
I wrote down here, to be born is to have a soul, which means replicants are no longer manufactured somewhere to be a slave, nor dependent on their human creators to give them longer lifespans and programmed memories. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, at what point do we almost give these things that we're living with a soul? Because if they're giving us everything we want with all the expressions and the attitudes and everything we value as being alive, you know, what's a soul? What's this, that, or the other?
Yeah, soul is something that has lots of different merit to it, and it's been. Yeah, you could, once again, that's another rabbit hole we could go down to as well. But yeah, it's interesting to talk about the differences between something that is conceived versus something that is engineered.
You know what else too? Because it seemed like they were having a rough time in the movie, not necessarily rough time with the script.
I'm having a rough time.
Yeah, rough time, but with crossing those lines, because these replicants up until Nexus 6, I think it was called.
I believe the most recent one was Nexus 8.
Well, in this movie, yeah.
Yeah.
But until then, they weren't capable of reproducing.
Right.
And them being able to reproduce, or they were created to with a certain lifespan, and then when that lifespan was up,
4 years,
they were going to die, and that was it.
That was it. Yeah.
And now they're created to live a lot longer, almost like a human life.
Right.
But still made to die. And now that they could replicate themselves, it's like they,
Well, and I think that's where the main theme and of the plot comes into play is the fact that now there's these rumors about how there's a human and a replicant who were successfully conceived.
Right.
Because that, I think, is kind of one of the walls that they were having to contend with, in the sense that if something is engineered in a lab versus something that was conceived between two people. Moving on here, the original Blade Runner plot examined the social dynamic of replicants coexisting with humans. And this sequel expands upon that general premise, in introducing the idea of successful reproduction between a human and a replicant, causing alarm as to what the social consequential ramifications of that might be. And I think that that's kind of now it's your turn to blow your nose.
Sorry,
You're gonna
keep
leave
talking.
me. Okay. I think that kind of sums up mainly like what you were getting at in terms of just what is a soul, what are the quote unquote special rights that humans would have over replicants, that sort of thing.
Omnic rights.
I will say though, I love the first 1/3 of the movie, the farm intro scene, getting reacquainted with the futuristic LA, all of that I thought was just spot on.
Whatever happened to the tree?
Well, it was a dead tree.
I know, but he was like studying all the pictures, and I realized that it meant a lot more. He had the date on there and everything, but the way he was studying it so much and talking about it and going back to the setting, I thought, okay, something's going to happen with the tree, and then like nothing happened. Or did I miss something?
Well, there was a date that was etched toward the base of the tree, the trunk of the tree. But I think also due to like the ecosystems collapsing, I think that was a visually arresting image, because most of Blade Runner is centered around just a lot of concrete, a lot of architecture.
Yeah, concrete jungle.
Seriously, I mean, you really didn't see grass or bushes, trees, what have you. And so just even though that tree was dead, looking at it like that, I mean, it was just amazing to like actually see some sort of organic life. It was unfortunate that most of the futuristic LA wasn't explored more, though. All we really got was a peripheral tour, but no real drill downs.
Right.
A film that comes to mind that successfully does this is Collateral. Did you ever see that with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx?
I don't think I did. No.
Oh, dude, I think it's a Michael Mann film. That if you haven't seen it, you need to check it. That is good.
I'll put it on the list.
Well, the city and its inhabitants play key supportive roles in the overall plot. I don't want to you haven't seen it, so I don't want to. Basically, Tom Cruise plays this assassin.
Tom Cruise an assassin? No way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Believe you me. But he has to assassinate these different characters.
He goes on a Mission Impossible into oblivion.
Yeah. Yeah. But it also, you have innocence.
With a Minority Report in hand. I'm sorry. Okay, go. I couldn't help it. I had to say it.
You're T-boning my thought process. Let me start over here a bit. So Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. So like the fact that like in the movie, the city and its inhabitants play key supportive roles to the plot. So like the characters who are Tom Cruise has to assassinate, the innocents and the scum they interact with, the layout of the city and how it tips the scale in favor of the two main stars, because there are moments throughout the film where, I mean, just the city itself just seems alive, and there's a lot that happens within that city that causes each actor to get the upper hand at some point or other. But I don't want to go too much into it because you haven't seen it. But definitely put that on your to watch list. It's really, really good. Did you feel the same way though? Like when you were watching the Blade Runner, how it was like we saw these cityscape shots and stuff, but I wanted there to be a bit more interactivity just in terms of moving the plot forward.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of my issue with the cinematography, but we can get that a little bit. You want to go on? What do you got to go on with? You want to get into debate whether Harrison Ford is a replicant. He isn't.
Sure, I will say he's not.
Okay. Why? Do tell, Rusty Boots.
Because the theme of the movie is all about how a human was able to successfully get a replicant pregnant. How that's not supposed to be possible. And that right there, like, made the decision for me. I was like, oh, okay, there you go. Because if he was a replicant and then the other person, the other character was a replicant and they end up having a child together, yeah, that would be also a miracle because they're not supposed to be able to reproduce. But that was not what was said in the film. In the film, they were talking about how, like, the notion, like what Robin Wright's character was saying, the lieutenant, you know, if this is in fact true of a human and a replicant successfully reproducing, that's going to completely cause chaos. So that's my take. What's your take, Steve?
Well, I have to read you something because I can't just like give you little tidbits. I'm going to read something to you, Russ. So I want to make sure you flesh out your ideas and they're in a complete entirety. If you want to go, I'll go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm a little torn here, Russ. Yeah.
Nuts. Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah, it gave me the impression that Deckard was a replicant 7, because they go from 6 to 8, but they skip a 7. Like Rachel. She was like the prototype.
Prototype.
Yeah. Able to reproduce, but not have the strength of the 6th. Like Roy was a 6, and he was in the first movie. And he was really, really, really strong.
Yep.
Like the 6th model or the 8th, because I think Sap was an 8 also. I think also K was an 8. Because they were both.
K,
I mean, they're all strong.
Yeah,
they're
K was
stronger.
an 8.
Yeah. Ridley Scott said Deckard was supposedly written as a replicant, but doesn't come out and fully say he is in the movie. Harrison Ford says Deckard is not a replicant. There's plenty to insinuate both ideas. Wallace, who's Jared Leto in the movie, says Deckard was designed to meet and procreate with Rachel. At the end of the first film, you hear Gaff's voice repeating, "It's too bad she won't live," referring to Rachel. And then again, then again, who does? And he sees the original unicorn, origami unicorn that is,
right,
at his door, left by Gaff, which represents Deckard's dream of the unicorn was known by others than just Deckard. Which leads me to believe that it was one of those implanted memories. And then, of course, Rachel did die during childbirth. So at the same time, Deckard shows all the non-replicant emotions, expressions, the nonverbal communication, human imperfections, movement, like walking and running, like I said, that supposedly more sophisticated models created after him don't do. From before 2019, which was the original movie, to 2049, Deckard is still more human with more judgments and processes and reactions. So it wouldn't make sense in the story to have a very old model light years ahead in technology than the other brand new replicants, unless there was like another Tyrell corporation that was also making replicants.
Yeah.
And I thought too that one of the last scenes where they finally discover Deckard and Kay in that Vegas wasteland. Harrison, I gotta refer to these people as one name. I'm kidding. So Deckard runs down the stairs and out the door. Kay runs right through the brick wall.
Right.
And I thought, okay, so like if Deckard was a replicant, he would be a weaker replicant able to reproduce. But then I got to think, okay, if Kay is a replicant and he's flesh and bone, if you could slam flesh and bone up against a brick wall, the brick wall is going to win, not the flesh and bone. So at the same time, what is he actually made with?
Well, again, I think that's where the bioengineered part comes in, because in that initial text, it talks about how they were bioengineered to be like these superhumans. Like they're basically like just super strong, like you said, and therefore probably have a lot more mojo in the system or something. I don't know, like just that they're a lot more of a dense mass.
But they also don't feel pain.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing too, is like not being able to feel pain. I mean, that's all a part. Once again, I think the bioengineered part comes into play of like, okay, if we were to make improvements to the human, how do you know, what would be on your wish list? And I think part of that has to do with the fact that you wouldn't feel pain. You'd want to be a lot more strong. And also remember too that the original idea of the replicants was to be able to work on those off worlds, places that were probably quite hostile to humans in terms of the needs. So
also too, they were talking about this Vegas wasteland being somewhat radioactive.
Yeah.
And they read it and it said the radioactivity was nominal.
yeah.
But at the same time, at some point, it was very, very radioactive. And could a normal human live there?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's why Deckard, if maybe he was a replicant, was able to live there solely by himself with no other human contact, was because he was bioengineered to be stronger. So I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah, and that's what part of the fun. And honestly, Ridley Scott is kind of known for that, even in the Alien movies that he's worked on too.
You know, I never watched Aliens.
Any of the Aliens?
I've seen scenes out of them, but I played the arcade.
Steve. We're going to have ourselves a bro date.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold the phone. I remembered something after Dimmick the movie. Rachel, the actress who played Rachel. Do you know what else she played in, Russ? That was part of your personal upbringing.
I have no idea.
Lois Einhorn, Ace Ventura.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
I'm serious.
That's crazy.
And kind of creepy too, but you can see her, right?
I see it.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's nuts. You know what I have to say to that?
Oh, righty then. At some point, you're going to have to I remember in high school, you had a lot of the movie memorized, and we're entertaining people in the bus with 25 minutes worth of memorized dialogue in the movie.
Sure.
At some point, you have to do that on the show.
Yeah. We'll get to that. I think the final thought I have regarding the plot is that it was a trip to see Deckard's love return. You know, speaking of the actress, apparently they got her to come back and reprise her role. That was her. So when we were in the theater, I was sitting there, I'm thinking, wait, is that CG? Or is that someone who looks like her? But no, that was her.
Wow.
So that was not exactly plot-esque, but I mean, just the fact that she shows up because he's trying. Well, I'll try and I'll weave this into it being appropriate for the plot section. The fact that Jared Leto's character was trying to persuade Harrison Ford to give him what he wanted, and by once again bringing a bioengineered version of his wife or love interest back in, it was trippy to see that. I was like, whoa, that's a nice connection.
So I just had a couple more things to say, and then I'll let you move on, Russ.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read what I have written here because I think it'll go a little faster. I know we're getting a little pushed for time.
It's quite okay. Quite okay. Quite all right. Quite okay. We're gonna stick with quite okay. I like
quite a quittal. I think there's some sort of parallel between Kay sacrificing himself to save Deckard and Roy from the first film also saving Deckard before dying himself. I believe it was the same song actually for both scenes.
Oh, okay.
I think. I could be wrong, but I think it was the same song, Tears in the Rain or something like that. Or maybe I'm misquoting it, but I think it was the same song. So after watching both movies. Anyway, I'll let you decide on that one, Ross, because you're the movie buff. But I digress. Sacrificing themselves for a larger cause, the replicant cause. And that he, meaning Kay, also isn't the one to save the day, and that the fate of the future lives and dies with him, or doesn't live and die with him, but he alone is indeed special and has a special part, or a thread to play in the knitting or sewing together of what's to come. And I like themes like that. You see some of that in Lord of the Rings, where it's even the smallest person can change the course of the future. I love themes like this, where he has this journey where he thinks he's something incredibly important, and then he finds out he's not important, and then in the end, he plays a significantly important part.
Yeah, that's a hero's journey.
You're right. This last thing is actually not my own. I got it from the YouTube channel Looper, but I thought it was intriguing. Looper. So he says, in regards to the symbolism of the characters love and joy. Joy was something that Kay longed for and could only find as a prepackaged product that he could buy. Ultimately, joy was something he could only see and hear, but never actually touch. And by the end, his joy is crushed by love. And love, as we see throughout the film, is both beautiful and cruel. By the end, Kay literally grapples with love and drowns her, all to save Deckard and reunite him with his daughter. For Deckard's love to live, Kay has to destroy love himself.
Well, nicely said.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Very nice. Yeah, because there are when you look at a well thought out film, you have the different conflicts in there. I mean, you have man versus man. In this case, it's Gosling and Leto, or even like man versus woman in this case too, where you have the physical altercation between Kay and Love. You have man versus environment, which when the thing that comes to mind off the top of my head is just kind of that last battle sequence with the ocean. They're trying not to drown and that sort of thing, or the areas that are radioactive, that sort of thing. You have man versus fate, which is kind of like what that person from Looper was talking about, where Gosling was willing to sacrifice himself to reunite Harrison Ford's character with his daughter. There are other ones. There's like man versus self. There's one other one I can't think of off the top of my head, but if I had more brain power, I'd be able to tell you. That's cool, though. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let us go into script/dialogue. I think this will probably be a quick one just because I had a hard time coming up with some notes about this, but essentially, the script, unsurprisingly, is quite minimal, just like the first film. I think that is kind of a intentional decision that was made where, like, I think I mentioned this earlier, where they have certain lines of dialogue, but it's almost like the conversations are always stilted.
Right.
I would say the one exception would be that of Robin Wright's lieutenant character talking and screaming and stuff to Kay. But really, when all the other conversations you have just either monologuing or there are these like long drawn out pauses in between the responses from each one of the characters. So it's just, if it's not that, then it's fragmented, unfinished sentences that are intentionally designed to leave it up for interpretation for the viewer. That was really the only kind of note I had regarding it. I didn't really hear any kind of memorable dialogue except for when he said her eyes were green. Yeah. I think that's what everybody will walk away with.
Yeah, I didn't find any takeaways either from it. A lot of the lines were forgettable. However, they did fit the film, and I think that fans of the film or of the original film worked on this script too.
Sure.
Because everything fit. It just wasn't anything that you're going to say in your life. You're not going to say to somebody, "Oh, she had green eyes." It's forgettable. I was looking at my notes. I tried to find out something, but let's see. That's
quite all right.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about the script.
Well, I have a lot to talk about with regards to cinematography, and I want to kick this segment off with showing you this video I found. It's actually something that IMDb put together. I think it's great. But it is a shot-by-shot comparison of the Blade Runner trailer running right next to the original Blade Runner trailer from 1982. And what was really neat about the whole thing was that the filmmakers decided that they wanted to pay homage to the original trailer of it. And so they set up all of these shots exactly the same way in terms of editing and whatnot as the original. So what I've done is I have actually posted this on our YouTube So if you do a search on YouTube for Joygasm TV, just look for the movie trailers playlist, and you'll see the Blade Runner shot-by-shot video up there. So that way you guys who are listening to it, even though you can't see it at this point in time, just reference it on our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about. But I didn't think that you had seen this yet. Have you seen this yet, Steve?
I saw a whole lot of trailers. I don't know. I went push play and we'll see.
All right.
I stayed up pretty late last night and saw a bunch of stuff. So,
So you can see the top portion
Every
is Blade Runner
civilization
2049. The bottom part is the original Blade Runner trailer.
was built off the back of a disposable workforce. But I can only make so many. Happy birthday.
There is an order to things. That's what we do here. We keep order. The world is built on a wall that separates
each
kind.
cut is like really identical. Like
On
the
either
time
side, there's
between
no
cuts.
wall. You bought a war.
You're a cop. I had your job once. I was good at it.
I'm glad they kept the blaster from the
What do you want?
from the first one.
I want to ask you some questions.
The key to the future is finally unearthed. Bring it to me.
They know you're here.
I always told you, you're special. Your story isn't over yet. There's still a page left.
Isn't that cool?
It's pretty cray-cray.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that I just nerd out over. And, you know, when you have people who are paying that much attention to the source material, like they understand that you have this huge fan following to something. I would have never put that together.
Yeah,
It had enough. No, I really would. I mean, just looking at it, the fact that they made it a point to like painstakingly kind of just draw a parallel to the original trailer of Blade Runner, but then have the Blade Runner 2049 footage in there. It's just cool.
Yeah. I'm glad they, I'm kind of glad and I'm kind of not glad that watching both parallel, you can tell that the technology is the same.
Yeah.
As far as in the movie, what was concerned, like with the aircraft, cars, and whatnot.
Well, because you figure it's only 20 years later.
20 years.
Because it was like 2019.
2019.
Well,
2049.
2049.
30 years.
Is it 30 years? Yeah, 2019, 2020. It's about 20, isn't it?
2019 to 2029 to 2039 to 2049.
Okay, yeah, 30 years. Apparently, I don't know how to do math.
But at the same time, within 30 years, you'd think they'd have a lot more technology than they actually did in the movie. Like it didn't evolve that much that fast.
Yeah. Anyway, I just had to show you that just because I thought it was a great segue into cinematography just because that's what cinematography is about is having the frame shots and the lighting and everything else. So in Blade Runner 2049, the cinematography is some of the best I've seen in a while. And we've talked about this earlier in the program. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Every single shot you see, it's just visually arresting. I was really impressed by that. They painstakingly recreated the same approach to establishing shots and camera movements that are exclusively recognizable as Blade Runner shots, is what I call them. It's like those long drawn out shots. If you see like a car that's flying through the air, it's that same exact feel as the original. The architecture is a cornerstone in the world of Blade Runner for both films. In that they have fun revitalizing dated architecture such as Art Deco, mid-century, or Victorian era by incorporating colorful modern lighting. And I think that's a pretty slick way to go about it, to give that sense of future, in the sense that like you have the notion that like you're constantly building upon the past, in the sense that like as civilization grows, you have older parts of a city versus newer parts of a city and that sort of thing. And so in this film, we see certain buildings that are more futuristic, like the police station, that sort of thing. But it's really clever how they go about giving more of that futuristic vibe by intentionally using certain genres or period pieces of architecture that actually are quite old. I don't know. I think that's really, really cool. And it got me thinking actually about how anytime that we watch a movie that takes place in the future, you'll notice that the approach to how the sets look, like for instance, I'll use Back to the Future Part 2, when they actually go into the future. What's interesting about it is if you study the way all the characters are dressed, the way the cars are designed, the visual aesthetic, the speed forms, even the architecture, what it is essentially a heightened or like a high fashion version of what it was currently the trend in all of those things. So like, because I think Back to the Future Part 2 came out in like 1987, somewhere around there. And so during the 80s, you had very 80s-esque architecture. You had very 80s styled of fashion and dress and that sort of thing. And so it's interesting looking at that, how like that was as far as they could push it. It's the same kind of thing with like the original Blade Runner, for instance, because that was in the early 80s. You had certain limitations in terms of what they were able to visually storytell. And as a result, it's like you had also like things that were very 80s. Now they were very high fashion 80s, but they were 80s nonetheless. I think that, and I don't want to digress too far on this, but I think that's why Star Wars has remained mostly timeless. If you watch Star Wars, there's not that kind of dated sense, because they ended up kind of smashing together, like doing mashups of different types of periods. So like if you take like the Imperial soldiers, for example, like on the Star Destroyers, that was essentially like, they took various aspects of like the German Nazi soldier uniforms, and they mixed it with kind of more of the 70s style. And so it was kind of weird how like you had these echoes of different time periods that were mashed up together. And so as a result, your brain you pick up subconsciously certain things. Like for instance, like the Nazism was, obviously everybody has a negative connotation associated with what took place with that group. And so that's played subconsciously with the evil empire, but it's not something that's like on the surface where you take it at face value, like, oh, those are the Nazis in space. It's not like that.
Space Nazis.
Yeah. What did you think of just the architecture overall?
Well, it was definitely intriguing. I liked the variety in the movie, but maybe I should just get to my thoughts on cinematography, because altogether, because what they did when there was the good parts, they did a marvelous job, and I mean that in every way I can. It was very, 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 very good. But however, with the Blade Runner setting, with everything foggy and rainy and dark, I almost wanted it to be more open, because when it's so oppressing as it is, and then you have inside shots where people are in an office or they're in a room or they're in that that little child slave labor camp orphanage kind of thing. You're either inside in four walls or you're outside when you can't even see 10 feet in front of you, you know? And so I thought, man, just give me, you know, I want to see more, but clearly, you know? And so some parts of the architecture I appreciated, but I really had to look for it at the same time.
It's interesting that you say that because the junkyard is really the only scene where it's in daylight and it's clear skies. And really, I mean, aside from the junk that's on the ground, there's plenty of open space. But it's weird because it still had that oppressive quality to it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But very stylistic to Blade Runner. I mean, if Kay was just walking towards his car, and his car was angled a certain way, and the way he walked with the pace that he walked, and that you couldn't see past the car because of the fog or whatever was there, and the colors in the same scene. I mean, it was like top-notch stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We also see glimpses of futuristic geometric behemoth structure exteriors, such as the police station or like some of those other, like the old Tyrell Corporation building or whatever. But I was surprised at how the interiors are rather lackluster and plain.
Yeah.
That was something that I was surprised about. And I realized that they're having to build upon the original Blade Runner. And so there's a bit of a problem because the original Blade Runner was made in 1982. They didn't have all of the technological advancements that we enjoy today in 2017. So that kind of shackles the creators because since this film takes place 30 years later, it's not like they can do this huge once over with everything else. I mean, they really do have to stick to what would be expected, which, I mean, at the end of all things, it's okay because this is the world of Blade Runner. So it's just kind of funny how like there are certain aspects to it, whether it's the instruments that they're using, you know, the scientific instruments or the rooms themselves, but they retain that 80s clunkiness. This is kind of funny.
I hope they have the Blade Runner squad car at one of these Comic-Cons because I'm getting in it and I'm taking my picture.
Oh,
I'm getting a selfie.
I have a feeling they may have had something like that, some sort of promotion at this last year's SDCC, but maybe you'll get lucky and in a future SDCC they'll have something for you.
I watched an interview with Harrison Ford. It was about 30 minutes long, and he was saying that they used quite a bit of practical effects in the movie.
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, it was more they did use CG, but more practical effects. I mean, he said it was more CG accents is the word I think he used.
Yeah. Terrific attention to framing each shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, wow, like the balancing the actors and the environments together. It was like a photographer's dream. You look at that and just, if you were to like just mute the movie and actually have the ability to pause it at any given point in time, just wonderful composition and framing.
Yeah.
Every time it's just all the foreground, midground, background elements, they all worked really, really well. And of course the lighting has always been a recognizable signature from the original Blade Runner. And this one carries the torch while enhancing it as well. But just once again, you know, it's amazing like how far we've come in 2017 with being able to do all kinds of things with lighting and whatnot. I really appreciated the movement of the lighting because in the original movie, you just had kind of spotlights that were moving around and stuff. But in this one, they were actually incorporating a lot of the architecture shadows, like the core shadows. For instance, when he was in Jared Leto's sanctuary, I guess, or whatever it is, if you noticed, a lot of it was very contemporary, very modern design.
Right.
And you had a lot of the continuation of it's what I call the blind shadow effect, but essentially like what was really popular in the 80s was to like, use a Fresnel light or something, cast it through a window that had blinds that were there.
Right.
And then it gave that kind of horizontal stripy shadowy effect. So it was cool to, an example of what I mean by carrying on and continuing the torch at the same time enhancing it. Like there was like one shot where they're walking down, they have those big replicant statues that were encased in glass.
Yeah.
And you had I think the light that was coming down from the ceiling, but it was moving. And as a result, due to all of the actual pieces of architecture, you had all those lines of core shadows and highlights going across them, across the floor and whatnot. It was just really cool. I appreciated how much nature was incorporated in the compositions as well, whether it was rain, snow, ocean waves, barren wasteland, desert, even the dead tree, and how they all complemented the buildings, vehicles, and technology. Like, this is something that I've noticed that there has been this ongoing trend, and I really like it a lot in the last few years, especially when it comes to like sci-fi movies or movies that take place kind of more in the future. They really do incorporate a lot of nature into it. And I don't know what it is, but I just think it's just sexy. It's so cool to see like you see, like the way the rain was being pushed along the windows of Kay's officer car, you know, while it's flying, and just the way it was creating those streaks across there, or even like seeing the dead tree among all this like ashen soil and stuff, or the snow. I mean, like toward the end when Kay is back in LA and you see that there, it's just so striking, the contrast of everything. It's just,
well, I think that has to do with all of the superficialness in the movie versus nature, which is 100% natural nature.
Absolutely. And I found myself as a human, I was desiring to see nature. It's funny how we as people, there is an underlying need to be around nature, whether it's grass or you know, any kind of foliage, whatever. There's a longing for that. And it's crazy because like just being a viewer watching this movie,
green.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. We're only in that theater for about 3 hours, but like during that time, anytime we actually saw some semblance of nature, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Like,
or even like blue sky.
I mean, yeah, even the fact that like when they were going along that dam that like kind of held the ocean back or whatever, just seeing the water. And it's interesting how Blade Runner constantly uses water in different forms. Like I just listed, I mean, like whether it's rain or snow or oceanic waves or whatever. I mean, there's always this water thing that's there. And I don't really, I'd be curious to find out if there is some sort of purpose to that. Anyway, I love the visual effects. Creating fabricated memories was just it's probably one of my favorite sequences when the girl was in that room and it was like this, like almost like a hollow deck or danger room from the X-Men, you know, where like it just, you could recreate these things, but having her create that birthday moment, it was just, you know, that's coming down the pipe at some point. I mean, it may be 50 years from now, or maybe it's less. I don't know, but
that reminded me of Star Trek.
Yeah, very Star Trek.
They did that bug that they made. Oh my goodness. I mean, I guess we're getting to some point where we can just put all these details in these bugs, but that looked like we were looking at it under a microscope.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah.
But also the cityscapes, the junkyard explosions, the holographic effects, all of it just played really nicely into the world. It just made it seem larger than life, which again, maybe why it made me wonder like what else was going on in the city. That's why I wished we would have had more than just a peripheral tour of it. I wanted to get down and dirty into the whole thing. So it was also a nice contrast seeing these neon brightly lit visuals against a dark, soggy, dank.
Oh, you had to have it though.
Yeah, honestly depressing city, and its people desensitized to all of the glitz, to all of the neon colors and lights and holographic images. It was interesting to see how, and again, a lot of the imagery that was up there was rather sexual in nature. There was just a lot of playing on the lust, playing on just, you know,
instant gratification.
Yeah, very much so. Instant gratification. And
the people who are walking by are just desensitized to it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you and I sitting there in the theater, you're just blown away by like we were laughing earlier about like seeing some like huge woman that's like the size of like a skyscraper come down and pay attention to you and like, you know, it freak you out.
Yeah.
But these people are just, you know, they're so desensitized to it and they just carry on with their life and whatever. And it was interesting too to see the contrast between the personas that were generated from these commercial products, you know, as being this utopian joy, this happiness and everything else. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum, the people who are just going about their daily routine and they just are the complete opposite of that. It's just crazy how like much of a disconnect there is with all of that. Did you have any other comments regarding cinematography, Steve?
I did not. I kept mine pretty short and concise and sweet.
I honestly hope that they are nominated for some awards for cinematography because
I said that in the beginning.
it was insane. I mean, just looking at each one of those, I cannot wait to actually go back, watch the movie again, just so I can drink in those visuals again. I thought they were.
I can't wait to throw something at the TV if it doesn't get nominated for an award. Are you kidding me?
Oh, there goes another TV. So moving on to soundtrack here. The soundtrack I felt was a total love letter to the original Blade Runner and the 80s in general. And what I mean by that is that there were just, of course, lots of synthesizer goodness to be found. Hans Zimmer has always incorporated synthesizer textures a lot of times in his work, so he was a good choice for this film, along with Benjamin. I believe his last name is Wallfish. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing
Starfish,
that correctly.
Russ. Starfish.
Benjamin Wallfish. But yeah, they were successful in arranging a cacophony of abstract sound art that complemented the visuals perfectly. I personally am not a huge fan of synthesizer soundtracks, but I do feel it is appropriate for Blade Runner. Blade Runner is just like Tron in that sense. I want to hear that. I will say, though, that there are times when if you can combine the synthesizer sounds with more of an orchestral arrangement, that's also really nice too. But yeah, a lot of drones, a lot of exactly. Yeah. A lot of that going on in Blade Runner, which, like I said, it's a part of the Blade Runner experience. So
it fits the movie, but when I think of soundtrack, I think of a CD I want to throw in the car and listen to music and show people. And if I go, hey, listen to this, it's going to move you. It's really cool. All I hear is, what was heard in the movie. They're going to look at me and think, what are you doing? Like, this has no melody whatsoever,
It really doesn't. And that's why I was saying it's like this cacophony of abstract sound art because it was much more centered around trying to, once again, evoke more of the emotion of that particular scene that you were watching. And even actually almost enhance some of the sound effects. Like if you had a car that like flew by the screen, you'd hear the sound effect of the vehicle, but also the music would also kind of almost act as an echo to it, which was interesting. It definitely made it more immersive, I felt like.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to win any awards, but it definitely went cohesively with the movie. So,
yeah.
And that's the most important part.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's transition to costumes. I thought that Joy had the best outfits.
Well, she had the most outfits.
She did. But they had that like futuristic vibe out of all of them the most.
Yeah, she's the only character that had any sense of fashion.
Yeah, and that was something that was really cool too, was just watching how once again this AI was constantly changing itself because it was reading Kay's mood. And so it was trying, in the end of all things for AI, the AI wants to achieve at making you happy to, like, in this case for Joy. And so it was interesting how when one thing wasn't working, then the AI would all of a sudden just switch to another outfit and then switch again to another outfit, just trying to find, okay, what is he in the mood for?
Yep.
What does he want?
Yep.
That sort of thing. Very interesting. But yeah, each one of those I thought, wow, that is really cool. Like that is something I definitely has that future-y quality to it. A lot of the other ones were just kind of like Harrison Ford's wardrobe was disappointing.
I mean, a lot of their wardrobes are disappointing.
But I mean, Harrison Ford, if you think about it, he looks like how we dress today. I mean, he was basically in pants and a t-shirt. There was nothing future about it.
He did have his wardrobe from 2019, which is only 2 years from now. I don't know. I want Kay's coat. I like that coat.
That was that actually reminded me of Watch Dogs.
I haven't played Watch Dogs.
It's not exactly the same. There are certain things that are similar.
I've seen similarities to that coat. But
yeah.
But I want that coat. It's kind of like that. It's a new trend on the pea coat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it.
Jared Leto's suits I thought were cool, but the whole Jedi robe thing was a bit too much in my opinion.
Yeah,
it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, that combined with the beard, and it was kind of like this weird, like twisted Jesus / Jedi funky. I'm like, no, that doesn't keep him in suits.
He doesn't. I'm telling you, his character, the way he was written, didn't fit the film. If he was somebody else, it could still be Jared Leto, but his costume, the way he was portrayed, just didn't do it for me at all.
Yeah. I also liked Loves, who was Leto's killer girlfriend or whatever.
Killer assassin assistant.
Yeah. I thought her outfits were really cool. She was probably my second favorite right behind Joy. I mean, just everything she wore, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Her knives were just gnarly looking too toward the end there when she was fighting Kay.
Yeah.
Man.
I like that white outfit I think she was wearing in the beginning when there was a sales deal happening between her and another client. And the way she was dressed then, I think she actually carried that outfit through a couple of different scenes, but I thought, hey, I could see that. And, evolve in the future, that outfit right there.
Yeah. Let me think here. I have a little bit of fun Blade Runner trivia courtesy of IMDb. It's not nearly as big as some of the other ones that we've covered, but there are some nuggets in here. Thought it was worth sharing. Let's see, while shooting a fight scene, Harrison Ford, and this is one that you actually talked about briefly at the beginning. While shooting a fight scene, Harrison Ford accidentally punched Ryan Gosling in the face. As an apology to his co-star, Ford invited Gosling to share a bottle of Scotch whiskey with him. That's a man's way of dealing with it. Burying the hatchet. David Bowie was I'm going to say this wrong. Villeneuve? It was I'll say the director. David Bowie was the director's first choice for the role of Neander Wallace, but passed away before the start of the shooting. And of course, that is who Jared Leto plays. So that's pretty interesting.
I read that too.
Have you ever seen the movie The Prestige?
Yes, you showed it to me.
I love David Bowie in that. He was the guy with the mustache.
You like that movie a lot more than I did. You were.
I was a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Another one of those Christopher Nolan masterpieces. The role of new Blade Runner Officer K was written specifically with Ryan Gosling in mind.
Indeed. I think I was going to say that before when we were talking about cast.
I
held my tongue.
He was the only choice for director. I'm going to say it wrong again, but I think it's Denis Villeneuve. Ooh, I may have got that right. Villeneuve. Something like that. Jared Leto traveled to Budapest, Hungary in September 2016 to film his scenes and was wrapped in just under 2 weeks, which makes sense because the guy is barely in the movie. It's like, man, you need to have that guy in there more. When Kay enters a building to find Deckard, the sign above the door reads in reverse, Hang Un. This is Korean for good luck. City Speak was comprised of many languages to include Korean. And actually, that was something I forgot to mention early on in the podcast. I have loved how they use Asian characters and whatnot throughout the film. But for some reason, every time I look at those, whether it's Japanese or Korean, whatever, they just have this cool futuristic vibe about them that just really works. It just, even when we're playing video games like Wipeout, for instance, like it was a classic older one. I think they may have had some Asian characters in there as well. If not, it was pretty close to it. But like just seeing that, I don't know, it just looks super cool. The next one we have here, Steve. The opening scene in which Kay confronts Sapper Morton is a near exact remake of a scene written and storyboarded but never filmed for the original Blade Runner. Pretty cool. In order to portray the blind character of Neander Wallace, Jared Leto decided to fit himself with opaque contact lenses that made it impossible for him to see anything. That's some method acting right there for you.
Indeed. I would think it would be hard to take those out because you can't look in the mirror and be like, okay, what am I doing here? That being said, I've never worn contacts and I can't stand stuff close to my eyes, so I probably would never wear. I can hardly even deal with eye drops, let alone contacts.
His eyes did look cool.
They did. They look like something out of what's that movie with Vin Diesel in it? Like a
Fast and the Furious.
No,
Iron Giant.
It's the Nocturnal movie.
Oh, Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah, that one. Well, that one, and then there's one before that one. It's like a prequel.
Riddick.
I don't know, but you're getting close.
Riddick
returns. Riddick is back. Riddick is buff. Riddick is blind.
Sylvia Hoeks is the second Dutch actor to be cast in a Blade Runner movie as a villainous android. Dutch actor Rutger Hauer, something along those lines, famously played by Roy Batty in Blade Runner 1982. And the final one I have here is that Ryan Gosling turned down the role of the Joker in Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I read that too.
That is insane. And of course, as we all know, the co-star Jared Leto was cast instead. I love little tidbits like that. I mean, it just shows how much of a small world it is. And there's just, once again, it's like, there's these parallels that are constantly going on with regards to these movies. This is crazy. So I have now gotten to the point now, Steve, where I would like to know, how many stars would you give Blade Runner 2049?
I would give it 4. And here's the thing. Throughout the entire movie, I'm constantly wondering who was actually human and who wasn't. And it kind of felt draining after a while. Added with that, with all like the raininess and the darkness and the the radiation or the fog and the claustrophobia, I felt like at some point I needed to get out and I needed to be refreshed, and then like I said in the beginning, I needed to feel the wind on my face. I needed to eat a meal. I needed to see the sunshine, so, yeah, there's that anyway, so there was a little bit of a issue with that for me. And, the fact of the pacing was a little off and a little awkward at times. And also the fact that the movie isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
This is definitely pure science fiction at its best.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I feel like it's a movie we needed. We needed a movie like this. Mm-hmm. Something that's so thought-provoking and gets you to think. It's not just some Hollywood cash grab, eat a bucket of popcorn and then leave again, you're entertained, whatever, on to the next one. This is something, it's way deeper than that. I felt like we, as a viewer, needed this film to come out. So yeah, with those few things, that's why I didn't give it a 5, but definitely a solid 4.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I give it 4 stars as well. I absolutely enjoyed going to the film, and I totally agree. I think that we need to have a lot more sci-fi films in the same vein. One of the games that actually comes to mind is Mass Effect 2.
Yeah,
And
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, just in terms of the soundtrack, it's very synthesizer-esque. You have kind of he's not an officer per se, but there is there are parallels of that are arguably pretty similar in terms of just the overall approach to the game and to the movie itself. And having said that, that is actually a great example of what I would love to see them do with Blade Runner in terms of, once again, drilling down into the world of Blade Runner, not just give us this peripheral tour on the surface, but like, Mass Effect 2, for instance. I mean, by the end of that game, and then Mass Effect 2 is like one of my all-time favorite games. You really do get a sense of just what this universe is about, where you belong in this huge, like just I can't even describe it, but just being this small little speck in this huge universe, and how you play this pivotal role. And there are all these different types of people that you run into, or even species of creatures and stuff, which once again, they were, taking these replicants to these off-world sites. Who knows what kind of creative storytelling they could do as a result of that. But yeah, I think that was the thing that ultimately prevented me from giving it 5 stars, just because, especially considering the fact that it was like almost a 3-hour long movie, there was surprisingly not a lot of stuff that really dived deep. It was much more of just that type of interpretive film experience, I guess. And it's interesting too how a lot of these films, especially when it comes to like the Alien franchise or the Blade Runner franchise, it's like what I mentioned earlier. They take this decidedly oppressive dystopia type of approach where like the future is just really dark and grim. It's not a happy place. It's not a utopian place. And that's all well and good. And I think also too that that's why Star Wars also did so well, was that it actually went the opposite direction in a lot of ways. I mean, it was a lot more of a hopeful, happier. I mean, it was still dangerous, but like there was more of a balance to the Force. But again, I'm not saying that that's necessarily better than Blade Runner, but just that's just what Blade Runner is known for.
Well, I think it might have been purposeful because they left the door open for more Blade Runner type stuff to come out.
Yeah.
We have the short films, and I'm sure they're not done yet with those because there's a 30-year lapse in time that something had to happen. Working on other planets. We have Wallace also, who we need to see his rise to stardom and fame. Plus, he is still alive and has his motives and his agenda. We also have the rebellious replicants also, who still have their own agenda to play out. Well,
and that's another thing that we forgot to really talk about during the plot section, which was just when Kay wakes up and there are all those replicants that are there. Once again, there really wasn't. I mean, it was like they gave us this brief little, oh yeah, we exist and this is what we're doing and we're going to try and win our freedom and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, well that's a tidy way to like just
throw it in there.
Yeah, but like, and I think that's why it goes back to the Mass Effect 2 example, which is just, I personally would love to see a Blade Runner where he meets these different people from these different walks of life. Maybe they're replicants, maybe they're human, whatever the case may be, but just perhaps have kind of more of this like motley crew of people that help, out in a certain capacity, whether, if you get into a fight or you're trying to gain some sort of sensitive information or whatever it is, like really dive into that, establish more relationships, provide opportunities to be able to branch off and create, like I said, like these standalone other stories that exist within the world of Blade Runner. But that's really the only kind of big flaw or issue I have with it.
And that also goes back to me suggesting that this sequel should have been, there should have been one movie in between this one and the 1982 one.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to wrap everything up in time with this movie when there should have been one that explained everything before this sequel came out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Any other final thoughts, or are you all done?
Well, Russ, in respect for the time, I think I will again hold my tongue.
All right. Well,
whoa. What rating would you give it?
Oh, I said 4 stars.
4 stars. Okay.
Yep. 4 stars here. 4 stars there.
Okay.
4. That will conclude this particular episode of Joygasm. Be sure to check out patreon.com/Joygasm and subscribe to get the most out of the show. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on SoundCloud.com/Joygasm TV. Last but not least, search Joygasm TV on YouTube and Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live. And I know right now we are currently having fun with Cuphead. And that is a doozy.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for listening.